Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we're going to be discussing the life of Lil Crazy D from the A-Tray Gangster Crips. Now, Lil Crazy D was born Nate Dwayne on August 4th, 1965 in South Central LA. Now, as a kid, he would be raised in the Manchester Square section of LA along with his siblings. Now, growing up, he would have a good childhood and love playing outside with his brothers and sisters. But the neighborhood would eventually start slowly changing by 1970 as the gang started to spread through the city. Now, his area would become the home to the notorious A-Tray Gangster Crips. Now, as a kid, Nate would attend Raymond Avenue Elementary, and later on, he would attend Horace Mann Junior High. Like most kids his age, Nate would get into a lot of mischief here and there, but nothing out of the norm. But things would all change when Nate would see his older brother, Deitri, aka Big Crazy D, join a local gang called the A-Tray Gangster Crips. Now, this will have an impact on Nate's life because not only was his brother a gang member, but he also had friends that was a part of the gang. So it was only a matter of time before he would get his put on. But in 1979, a war would break out between the A-Trays and the Rollin 60s, and the A-Trays were in need of new blood. And by the age of 14, Nate would get his put on to the A-Trays, and he would go by Lil Crazy D under his big brother, Big Crazy D. He, along with Lil Monster and Lil Spike, will be the third generation of the A-Trays. Now, around the same time, things would really start to heat up in the streets when the Rollin 60s would gun down Lucky and Twinkie from the A-Trays. Now, with these two deaths, the A-Trays were now out for blood, and Lil Crazy D, even at his young age, will become one of the most active members with the war with the Rollin 60s. Now, by the fall of 1980, the A-Trays had lost 5 soldiers, and the Rollin 60s had lost a total of 8. Now, although Lil Crazy D was deep into the streets at the time, he would attend Washington High School. Now, eventually his big brother Crazy D would get locked up. So without his big brother there, Monster Cody would help Lil Crazy D and other third generation members to sharpen their fighting skills in case they ever were in a situation where they had to use their fists instead of a gun. Now, around December of 1980, Lil Crazy D, along with Monster and others, had plans on robbing the Western Surplus to get some new guns to go to war with the Rollin 60s. They would get all liquored up, and Lil Crazy D was told by Monster to go to the crib and get a shotgun from his brother and Lil Monster. But before they can even execute their plan, the police would spoil it, and this would lead to one of the homies getting arrested. Now, later that night, Lil Crazy D, while at home, would get a phone call that Monster Cody and Lil Hunchy had been shot at by the Rollin 60s, but Monster Cody would be severely injured and was currently in ICU. Now, once he recovered, Monster Cody would call Lil Crazy D up on the phone and tell him what happened. Now, during this conversation, Monster Cody would leave out the fact that Lil Hunchy had left him hanging, which is how he got shot. And only weeks later, after the shooting on January 1st, 1981, the A-Trays would be out seeking revenge for Cody. Now, Lil Monster would lead the mission. Lil D and the others jived were to carry out hitting targets that were known Rollin 60 spots and shoot them up. Now, this mission would go on for 3 nights, and by the 3rd night, Lil Crazy D was said to be going from house to house looking for 6 old members. Now, these shootings would have the streets on fire, and the police were on high alert. Eventually, Lil Crazy D would report back to Monster, letting them know that they had a successful mission. Eventually, the LAPD crash unit would pay Monster Cody a visit while in the hospital, trying to get information from him to find out who was responsible for the string of shootings. Now, later on, Lil Crazy D would get a phone call from Monster informing him that Lil Hunchy had left him hanging when the 60 shot at him. Now, this would piss Lil Crazy D off, who would simply tell Monster, "I'll handle it." Now, from this point on, Lil Crazy D would become one of the most vicious A-Trays in the hood. Now, the death count would continue to rise between the A-Trays and the 60s all throughout the 80s. Now, eventually, most of the A-Tray main shooters would be locked up, with the exception of Lil Crazy D. And in 1983, OP from the A-Trays would be gunned down by a Rollin 60 Crip by the name of Keita Rock, who would eventually be arrested for his murder. Now, Lil Crazy D and Joker will be out on the warpath, and because they couldn't get Keita Rock, who is now locked up, they would go looking to shoot any 6-0 member that they could find outside. Now, around the mid-80s, Monster Cody would get out of jail, and Lil Crazy D and Joker would brag about how they caught a baby loaf in the A-Tray neighborhood trying to tag on the wall. Now, Joker would tell Monster, "Hey, we rolled old boy up and asked him what he was doing over here, He broke out trying to run, and Lil Crazy D would respond, "Cuz I cut his ass down with the 30-06 with the infrared scope. I f***ed his ass up cuz he was squirming," and that's when Joker would pull out his 4.5 and tell Monster Cody that he had shot that baby Lope in the head. And he would say, "I can't stand to see a bitch-made motherfucker suffering." Now, although he was active in the streets, he would still manage to graduate high school and even hold down a job as a mechanic at Sears. Now, in 1985, things would really heat up between the 60s after Lil Crazy D homie Joker shot and killed Mumbles, who was from Rollin 60s at a store on Florence and Normandy. But in return, the 60s, P.D. Wack and Lil Eddie Boy would go to Joker's family house and execute his mother and little brother. Now, eventually, both P.D. Wack and Eddie Boy would be arrested for this murder, and Joker would also be arrested for murdering Mumbles. Now, with Joker locked up, who is his road dog, Lil Crazy D will be out for blood against the 60s. He would really start applying pressure, getting into shootouts, which would lead to him to being shot over 9 times over the next few years. But somehow, Lil Crazy D would survive every attempt on his life. Now, because Lil D had built up such a vicious reputation in the streets, he had created a lot of enemies. And at this point, he was seen as a trophy for any hood if he was to get murdered. And this would lead to another attempt on his life for the 10th time. But this time, it would almost take his life. He would be shot in the head with the bullet going through his left eye, nearly removing his scalp from his head. Now, he would be in ICU for a while, but eventually he would recover. Now, he would lose his left eye and have to wear an eye patch for a while. Now, even after having this near-death experience, this would only make Lil Crazy D that much more savage, seeking vengeance of any of the A-Trade rivals. He would become one of the most hated and respected A-Trades in the city of LA. Now, by the early 90s, he would be in and out of jail on different charges. Now, also at the same time, his big brother, Crazy D, in 1992, would be sentenced to life in prison for a double murder, which stemmed back on Mother's Day in 1988. Now, this would affect Lil Crazy D heavily because he didn't believe that his brother was responsible for those murders. And in 1994, word would get out that a man named Thomas Ray had allegedly snitched on another homie from the set. On October 28th, 1994, there was a party being thrown by the 8 Trays on 82nd Street. Now, Lil Crazy D and another 8 Tray member named Young would pull up to this party on a mission looking for Thomas Ray. Now, D would start walking through the party, asking people where they was from, even though he knew everybody there was from the 8 Trays. Now, he would then make his way to the backyard where he would find Ray at. Once Ray saw Lil Crazy D, he would start going up to other members, pleading with them to not allow Crazy D to shoot him. And that's when Lil Crazy D would walk up, shoving people out the way and pull out his gun. He would put the gun straight to Ray's head, forcing him to get on the ground. But Ray wasn't going down without a fight, so he tried to wrestle the gun from Lil Crazy D, and it would become a tussle. Now, another 8 Tray member would try to break up the fight, but Crazy D gun would go off, and this would lead to that man being shot in his hand. Now, eventually, Ray would break free and try to run, but he would be shot in his back at close range and collapse on the ground. But afterwards, Lil Crazy D and Young would run back to the car, but before leaving, they would let off more shots aimed at the house. By the time the police and EMTs arrived, they would find the house riddled with bullets, and they would also find Thomas Ray in the backyard, and he will be pronounced dead from a fatal gunshot wound to the back. Now, multiple witnesses from the party would identify Lil Crazy D and Young as the shooters. Now, eventually, both will be arrested and charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. Now, during the trial, a total of 4 witnesses from that party would testify against Lil Crazy D, and it would be revealed by the prosecution that the victim, Thomas Ray, was not a snitch, nor was he a part of any active open investigation at the time. And by the end of the trial, Lil Crazy D and his co-defendant Young would both be found guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder, and will be sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Now, while in prison, Lil Crazy D would eventually change his life around and get his college degree while pursuing culinary. Now, after serving 25 years in prison, he would finally get released in April of 2020 to a halfway house. Now, at this point, he wanted to rebuild a relationship with his family, especially his 3 kids whose lives he had missed out on. But only 3 months later, in July 2020, Lil Crazy D would die of natural causes while still living in the halfway house. I would like to thank everybody for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next time.